All right, welcome everyone. Today I'm joined by Drew from Tailosive. Hey, Drew. You
Hi.
run two channels, right? Or is it more than two?
Yeah, it's basically two. Yeah,
Okay, you
that's it.
run Tailosive Tech and Tailosive
Yes,
EV, correct?
correct.
All right. So I know you're really busy, so thanks for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
No,
How
absolutely. Can I just say from the beginning, I'm a huge fan of your channel. I watch all your videos as quickly as I possibly can, and I'm a big fan. So I'm honored to be on your channel. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks. And I watch all your videos too, Drew.
Oh, good.
Obviously you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. I'm just a hobbyist. You're a professional YouTuber. How how
Yeah, a full-time hobbyist.
how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been doing it probably over 10 years for fun, but
Uh-huh.
I went full time about 6.5 years ago is when I
Oh,
like quit my job and just did YouTube, and that was it. And so far so good. As long as people are watching, I'll keep going. So we'll
that's
see how long
awesome.
it lasts.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, hey, I just want to know like how did you first hear about Aptera and how did you get
Ooh,
into it?
good question. I think I was talking to Chris Anthony about that too. I was trying to figure out. I think it was an Inside EVs article. I
Uh-huh.
was always very interested in EVs, mostly from a hatred of combustion engines. I just always hated the combustion, the complexities and all the maintenance. And I was just like, this sucks. I want to live in a world where we don't have to deal with combustion engines anymore. So I was always interested in EVs, and I was following them more and more closely as I got older. And then I think it was a news article. I can't remember who exactly made it, but they put the specs up, and they were like up to 1,000 miles of range and 40 miles a day of solar charging. And I was like, no way, that's a scam. Like, who is this? Who is out there claiming these bogus specs? Like, there's no way that's possible. I thought it was another Nikola situation. I was like, this can't be real. So I looked into it, and I saw the design, and I was immediately like looking for problems. But the more I looked into it and the more I dug into what their uh ideas were, and it was that first like 2019 launch video with the noir color, and they had it driving around, and the more I watched it, the more I was like, okay, that looks really cool. Actually, I suppose if you made it super aerodynamic, that would make sense. What about the battery? How heavy is the battery? So I just kept learning more and more, watching a lot of your videos along the way, and the more I watched and the more I learned, the more I realized, okay, these numbers aren't actually as crazy as they sound. It's actually just an aerodynamics and energy efficiency game. And the more I learned, the more intrigued I was, and the more I wanted to know as we got closer and closer, because I was mainly interested in EVs for their efficiency. So it started off with this, there's no way that's possible. And then I had all these follow-up questions about safety. And I went into it with a lot of skepticism, but I was just always impressed and amazed by the company's willingness to basically answer anything you ask. And that's another reason I loved your channel so much, was because you didn't pull any punches. Anytime there was an issue with the vehicle design or the way the vehicle was laid out, you would say, okay, how's that going to affect in the snow or the ice or puddles? And you would dive into it, different safety ratings and different crash situations, which ones are the most common. I've forwarded your videos to many people, by the way. So
Thank
it's
you.
just been a great like figuring out what do we really truly need in our vehicles. I think it's a great mental exercise, even for people who aren't necessarily the target demographic for the Aptera. I think can learn a lot from the company and from the ethos of it. So I'm a big fan now.
Okay, great. So it was kind of like 2020 when you or 2021 or like when was it? Like
I
3
want to
years
say it was
ago?
end of 2019. I feel like it
Okay,
was
so like
right
right at the
when
very
that
beginning
launch
when they
video.
relaunched.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of them in the early 2000s when they had their hybrid version or whatever. I
Mhm.
looked that up later and
Yeah.
found out, oh wait, this company has been around for a while, or fizzled out and came
Huh.
back. And obviously, I for a long time, even before Aptera, was always in favor of like, okay, we finally are starting to make electric cars work. Why can't we just cover them in solar? And every time I suggested that to people, or anyone has suggested that to Elon or Tesla or whoever, they're always like, well, it can't fully charge the battery within a single day, therefore it's not worth it. And I was like, no, that's not the point. It's supposed to be like supplemental charging. Like if it can just break even with the phantom drain, just like cover the cabin overheat protection or cover the Sentry mode, the cameras recording, that would be great, just to know that the car's not going to kill itself in a parking lot at an airport, you know. And I felt like a crazy guy listening to all these people say, nah, solar, it's not a good idea. I'm like, we finally have the opportunity to make like a self-powered vehicle. This can't be done with gas. You can't just collect gasoline from the atmosphere. You can't do this with hydrogen. Electric's the only situation where we could literally just charge from the sun and that powers the vehicle. And everyone's like, nah, not worth it. And I was like, come on, this is a great idea. Even if it was just 10 or 20 miles a day, I would be interested. So yeah, they just make too much sense. If I had my own company, this is basically what I would be doing right now.
Right. So like when you saw it, you were like, that's the thing I was thinking about.
Exactly. I didn't know as much about the aerodynamics. That was news to me. When I first watched their video, they were like, 60% or something high like that of your energy at highway speed is just moving air out of the way. And I was like, what? Is that true? Are they serious? Because, I'm not a, engineer. I'm not a college student or anything. I didn't know much about this. And the more I looked into it, and I was seeing range tests be done where guys would tow a trailer with like a flat wall, but no payload. And they would get worse range than a full max payload trailer that was in a teardrop shape in a more aerodynamic design. And those were real world tests. So I was like, okay, there's proof to suggest that aero does actually make that big a difference. So and once I understood the reasoning behind the design, I fell in love with it more. I was like, okay, that makes it a lot cooler to me and much more eye-catching. So now I'm just a fan of the aesthetic too.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the same feeling I had when I first heard about it. Oh, you printed it
Yeah,
out.
this whole thing.
Wait, did you print that out or did you get it?
I got it from all this were gifts. They set me up, thankfully.
Awesome. I think that green thing is like one of the early ones from like very early on in the thing.
Yeah. It's surprisingly intricate. You can see, I don't know if it shows up on camera, but they have the split window.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah, you can see it.
But yeah, I was impressed. I actually made a clay model that looked horrible. Yeah. And I painted it, and I'm not an artist. It looked like a psychopath put it together. It was horrible. But I brought it to them and I just said, hey, you don't have to keep this, but if you would like it on your desk or something, here you go. And they said, only if you sign it. So I signed it, and then they gave me this as a like
an exchange. So that's awesome.
So I'm awesome. Biased. You can say I'm biased based on my experience.
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone's got a bias. Like I'm obviously biased because I run a fan channel. Like I'm a fan. Yeah. But I think I do try to be I try to be as intellectually honest as I can. And I think you are. So I like that. So
you more so than I.
This visit that you had with them, when was that?
It was November 27th.
Okay, so like right after Thanksgiving.
Pretty much. And we actually had a trip planned the next day, and I was trying to schedule a date just like you. They're so busy, they don't have a ton of free days, I'm sure you've discovered.
Yes.
So I was suggesting to them, how about this day, and nothing was going to work. And they said, can we push it out till December or till January? And I was like, I don't want to wait that long. And I was like, so I just started sending them every 4-hour window in the day I had. I was like, how about this day? And one of them happened to be the morning before we left for a big trip to Colorado. And I was like, can you do it this morning? And they were like, okay, technically, yeah. So it was one of those things where we met with them early in the morning, filmed as much as we could, and then I had to drive home immediately afterwards for 12 hours. It was a very long drive. Wow. So that's why I was asking him, can I take this today? That would be great. You don't need it, right? You'll have the PI build soon.
Right.
So it was a packed day, and they only told me I was going to get the test drive. That's all they said.
Right.
And then it was that morning basically where they said, actually, you might get to interview some people and you might get to look around. I was like, oh, great, wonderful.
Right.
More than I thought.
So what day was that? Was that a Friday or Thursday or Monday,
I think it
Tuesday?
was
It
a Monday.
was a
Let me double
Monday.
check. Yeah, I'll double check. Yeah, Monday morning.
Okay. So I think, I mean, like, so, we've been talking, and I try to go out to see them in November. Things didn't
Yeah,
work out. They're super busy. I also have a day job, and I gotta like work around that.
sure.
And then December, just like, it's just crazy with the holidays. I got busy. They're
Oh yeah.
busy. And so now I'm hoping to go like January. So I think it worked out great, because now you got, like, if I went in November, you and I would just have the same stuff,
Yeah,
and
that's
it
true.
would be kind of pointless. Like, but now, like, we see, like, what's the
Well, I'd like to
status.
meet you in person
Oh yeah,
still. That
that would have
wouldn't
been
be
cool.
pointless.
But like now, from your video, we kind of see like what the status of their pre-factory is right now, and then
Right.
hopefully in January we'll see some progress. Is
Yeah, I
what I'm
think
hoping for.
I think there's a lot of interesting developments with the PI builds going on right
Yeah.
now. It felt like they were kind of prepping for that while I was there. So
Mhm.
obviously, knowing your depth of knowledge in the company and knowing how you ask the good questions and the tough questions, I'm just as excited as going as I am to see your video covering it and
Uh-huh.
everything. And yeah, that's gonna be fun. I look forward to that.
So, you've gotten to drive one of them, and I've never been able to drive them. I just got a ride in the beta. So
Oh, okay.
you didn't get a ride in the beta or anything, so you don't have any frame of reference to like compare between the two. Like,
Correct. I
what,
sat in
like,
a few alphas, but that was
okay,
it.
right, but it didn't go anywhere. I sat in some alphas. I
No.
didn't go anywhere with it. I just drove the well, did we go on a ride in alpha? I forget now. But I definitely remember the beta ride, because the beta ride, that thing launched like crazy. And
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
they
for sure.
said, "Oh, this is kind of detuned. Like, we kind of like, we're not giving it the full power yet." And I was like, "Wow, that is crazy," because
Wow.
it launches really hard.
Yeah,
So what are
yeah.
your thoughts? What were your thoughts about driving it?
Oh, it was quite an experience. This is my first time driving a prototype of any kind, so I
Mhm.
was kind of surprised that they were willing to let me
Right. I'm
get
kind of wondering
mine.
how their like insurance thing works out. I mean, that's what I figured, they wouldn't let me drive. They weren't letting people drive, but now they've let a lot of people drive Gamma. They've had
True,
a bunch
true.
of
I've heard several
influencers drive
people.
it. Yeah.
I should preface, I don't know if I included it in the video, but they did have a follow car, which
Okay.
kind of made me feel like special and fancy. I was weird. There was like a big truck with a flatbed that they said he's just going to follow you wherever you go.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay. So they were ready basically to intervene if something went wrong, I guess.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But yeah, we went at a certain portion. I'm trying to remember if it was in the video, but there was a certain highway we went on where we were going, well over 50 miles an hour.
Hmm.
And this is my first time riding it. I didn't have beta or alpha, and I was surprised by the stability of it. Obviously, there were some creaks and rattles. There was some
Yeah.
prototypey things, but I kind of was expecting that going into it. I mean,
Yeah.
my Model 3 has some creaks and rattles
Uh-huh.
sometimes, so I wasn't expecting it to be flawless. I knew they didn't have the carbon fiber body yet, and they were telling me all about how the suspension and stuff on Delta is going to be different than Gamma. So I had kind of a certain expectation that it wasn't going to be flawless, but it was quite eye-opening to me, the difference in visibility in person.
Hmm.
um Compared to my Model 3. Like, if you look at the side profile of a Model 3, the window is very flat with
Hmm.
the door panel,
Yeah. You
whereas
mean the
with the
side window?
Aptera, yeah,
Uh-huh.
right. And on the Aptera, there's a good sticker of it here. The window here goes down a lot further than
Okay.
on the Model 3, which
Okay.
helps a lot with the visibility of the wheel pant,
Okay.
because you can see exactly where it is from the driver's seat. The closest wheel pant to you, you can't see the one further from you.
Right.
Um, but the visibility, I thought that big split window design on the website and pictures and stuff, it looked like a bigger issue. It looked
Yeah.
like, oh, that's like right at eye level. I'm going to have a hard time seeing out. And then once I actually started driving around in it, just like how you mentioned in your videos, your brain kind of just blends all the windows together. Your brain is filling in the gaps. When you're in motion, you don't really notice it. And I was impressed with how good the visibility was, both from like I see how far the nose cone goes, so I'm not worried about running into something in front of me.
Hmm.
One big difference with my sedan is that once I, especially once I got back into my Model 3 after driving the Aptera, I realized how boxy most cars are. They
Mm-hmm.
just, the side window and everything just goes straight up, and then usually you have your big roof. The
Mm-hmm.
Aptera is much more rounded, and you notice that when you get in it, you feel the corner. Your head's a bit closer to the side than maybe a traditional car,
Uh-huh.
although I didn't find it like too close to like I'm bumping into it accidentally all the time. They definitely thought about the proportions and everything, but yeah, it was, visibility was better than I thought, because I was expecting, based on the website, okay, this is a really wide vehicle with the wheel pants outward mounted. So I thought that was going to be a bigger issue. And then after driving it around, I was like, oh no, you get really comfortable with it. It's not the same thing as driving like a truck that's actually that wide, because now every part of the vehicle sticks out that much, opposed to just the front where you're not even getting out anyway. So when you're in a parking space, obviously those wheel pants are kind of nearing and getting closer to those parking lines, but the part where the door actually opens and you step out is very narrow, it compared to a truck, or even a sedan, it's more narrower. So I was very grateful for how tight it felt and how easy it was to park and kind of navigate in a tight space. And we took it over some speed bumps and it did fine. um so yeah, there was some little things with the powertrain that weren't quite finely tuned right, which I think they know of, like the regen, I don't know if you heard, isn't quite there yet, so you have to go back to two pedal driving if you're used to one pedal driving. So
Oh,
that was a
okay.
little bit of a learning curve. It was like I was used to my Model 3 coming to a stop on its own, and then in the
Mm.
Aptera it's like, nah, you actually got to push the brake.
Did it
Okay,
have any
that's,
regen?
I don't think that one did at all.
Okay.
I don't think it was
Okay.
active, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's production intent. I'm pretty confident they definitely want one pedal driving. Knowing how efficiency focused they are,
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
very shocked if they just said no, no regen. So that
Right.
was, I think, just a gamma thing. The other thing was like, there's a manual, it's not built into the screen, but there was like a manual parking brake, just a
Mm.
little switch
Okay.
underneath the display, and they just said, yeah, just hold this down for 5 seconds and then let go. So they had some way of, because it was hand built, so
Right.
I wasn't looking at those kinds of things as like, oh, you should fix this for the, they know
Right.
all that.
Right.
But there was little things. I think a mistake I kept making, partly because I'm a Tesla driver currently, is that when you signal, they didn't have this system ready where after a certain amount of turns on the yoke, the blinker shuts off.
Oh, right.
So on the Gamma, it was like you signal and then you complete your turn and then you have to turn the blinker off,
Right.
which they said we're aware of that. That's not going to
Yeah.
be on Delta, but there were just little things for the prototype that you had to be aware of,
Uh-huh.
that
Did
I
they tell you
I had to
whether
click.
like the turning, like how many times you have to turn the yoke is the same on Gamma as the PI builds? Or was that
Ooh,
something that we
that's a
didn't go
good
into?
question. I remember asking about the turning radius because I
Mhm.
thought Gamma's was pretty good. I mean, maybe my expectations were too low or something, but
Uh-huh.
they said that the Delta production intent turning radius would be twice as good as Gamma. And I thought Gamma was pretty decent
Fine.
already.
Yeah.
So I was impressed by that. But yeah, I would assume, based on how much I was turning it, that it
Uh,
would probably be the same.
okay.
I don't think there was that many more spins you could bake
Mhm.
into it. So I would assume it's the same. But now, after watching all this Cybertruck content, I'm really hoping Aptera could make steer by wire work someday. That would
Right.
be that
Yeah,
would
that's
be
definitely
ideal
not
for a yoke.
happening initially. They have a
Right.
mechanical linkage. Um,
Yeah.
you're not used to driving with a yoke, right? Your Model 3 doesn't have a yoke. It's a
No
regular
yoke
wheel.
on the 3.
Uh-huh.
I shortly, about a week after I drove Gamma, I drove around a Model S with a
Hmm.
yoke.
Hmm.
And I maybe it's my attitude towards things. I consider myself a bit of a futurist, and like as
Hmm.
soon as there's a new standard or a new thing that comes out that everyone thinks is the future, I just kind of force myself to get used to it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes more sense. I'm going to get used to it. So maybe it's because I'm young or something and I'm just
Uh-huh.
adaptable, but I didn't find it a big deal at all.
Right.
I've heard many people complain about the blinker buttons and the yoke and having to turn it around. And yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I
Mhm.
was I was ready after 5 minutes. I was like, okay,
Okay.
just pivot from this point and you're good. And That there was a difference with Gamma from the production version, which they said that there's basically no power steering in Gamma.
Right.
So you complete a turn, if you let go, it'll just keep going. You have to manually push it
Oh,
back.
okay. It didn't
And
return to
I
center
asked
very
that.
well. Yeah.
No, it did not pretty much at all return to center, but they said that that will be there's some things they can do with the suspension and also
Correct.
physical power steering they can do to fix that. So
Yeah.
they were glad I asked though.
Yeah. I mean, those are like two things that you hear from a lot of people is like that they think that that divided window is going to be like a terrible, terrible problem. And that's what
I
you
understand
were
the
concerned
concern.
about that too. And it turned
I
out
had
when you tried it, it
that
wasn't
exact
that
same
bad.
issue.
Yeah. And
I
then there,
think that's a lot of things.
people are really concerned about the yoke as well. A lot of people are. And I've never driven a yoke myself, but I just figure like can't be that hard to get used to.
Yeah, and I mean the thing to remember is I don't think the yoke is better in every single situation, but
Mhm.
in most situations of driving, I do think it's better, particularly visibility. If you're going to have a display back there, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a yoke on a vehicle that doesn't have a driver display. Like on my
Yeah.
Model 3, there's
Mhm.
nothing back there, wouldn't help with visibility. It's fine. But on the Aptera, you've got a UI that I've honestly kind of fallen in love with now, having those blind spot cameras right behind the yoke. Very convenient position, very high frame rate, by the way. I was very happy with those displays and the cameras they were using. And you can see those so much better with a yoke, especially where they have it mounted. And if you had a full steering wheel, that would cut into your visibility more of those cameras. Oh, that was another thing. I don't know if I mentioned that, but the mirrors on Gamma are totally useless.
Yeah, they're totally
They're doing
worthless.
nothing.
Yeah.
Not only are they not in a great place to see, which
Uh-huh.
is why I kept asking about, so how do we remove these guys?
Uh-huh.
But also they weren't like a traditional mirror. It was
Okay.
like just a reflective surface, like a fun house.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
just
I
like a
wonder like
blurry
on the PI
reflective
builds
thing.
how effective those mirrors are going to be because they are blocked by the divider, right?
Right. Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
see them much at all. And
Yeah.
I think Chris was kind of winking me on that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I was like, so how do we remove it? And he was like, well, legally those mirrors are great. He kept emphasizing on the legal point, those
Yes.
mirrors let you see everything. They're great. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I got it.
Uh-huh.
But then Jason was the one who reiterated that, yeah, they're using like an Allen wrench or something very basic to remove
Yeah.
them, which because those displays are there with the camera feeds, it's going to be the easiest thing to get used to
Right.
visibility wise.
Now,
And it helps your arrow.
did you like having those right in the front? Was that because that's not how we usually drive. You know, we drive by looking at the side mirror and then looking over there to change lanes and stuff.
Yeah.
How did you feel like that made sense pretty quickly?
Yeah, again, I might be biased because I'm kind of a futurist, and
Uh-huh.
I mean, in my Model 3, I'm very used to now the repeater cameras showing up whenever I signal. They already pop up on the main display.
Mhm.
So I had gotten kind of comfortable with that. In fact, when we were on our Colorado trip, I was driving a Subaru, and I found myself every time I signal, I would look at the center display because
Uh-huh.
I was checking to see if someone was there, and I was like, "Oh wait, yeah, mirrors, they're a thing." So maybe my perspective is biased, but I found that fairly intuitive. I mean, if you just think about the total distance your eyes are traveling
Uh-huh.
from road, screen, and probably some people will need to adjust as well with the rear view screen
Mhm.
because a lot of people are used to their eye like focal distance being far away and they look at the mirror and that's also far away, whereas now
Right.
you need to focus on something a mere few inches away.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a learning curve for sure, and I could see some people being frustrated with that, but I don't think it's a deal breaker um for all the advantages the product has. So there's a learning curve. I think some people will go, oh yeah, I gotta kind of reset the way my eyes look at screens versus mirrors and that kind of thing.
Mhm. What did you think of the driving position? Like, because it's very flat and your feet are like out kind of flat in front of you, right?
Yeah. This
Yeah.
one did have the seat adjustments. I know not all the prototypes let you like
Mhm.
move the seat back and forth, but I got in a pretty comfortable position and I was fairly happy with it. If anything, I would say just because of the overall roundedness of the body, I did feel a little bit off to the side
Mhm.
visibility wise, or just position wise, because obviously you got two seats up there,
Mhm.
but it's more rounded all around the edges than a typical car. So you feel like your head is kind of close to, I don't know, a bit more left bias than maybe what you're used to in a traditional car, but not not horrible, but yeah, a little bit to the side than a traditional car because you're used to your windshield kind of going up into the corner of your vision, whereas
Mhm.
now it's kind of rounding out a little bit closer.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't feel like I couldn't see my surroundings very well. I was
Mhm.
very impressed with the visibility, everything around me, and I think given the general shape of the vehicle, there probably isn't a better way to position yourself
Right.
without fundamentally redesigning everything.
But how about like the seating position and like the way your legs were out? Was that relatively comfortable for you?
Oh yeah, I felt extremely comfortable as soon as I sat in it, honestly. I was very impressed by the leg room. I
Mhm.
felt like, especially in the passenger seat, I had more leg room than my Model 3.
Mhm.
So other than like those external mirrors, which are kind of pointless, but don't tell the, the government that,
Yeah.
they're just kind of there and you can't see them very well. But other than that, yeah, I felt comfortable with the driving position. My wife also sat in the driver's seat and the
Uh-huh.
passenger seat. She felt comfortable with it. And I was not expecting the seats to be as comfortable as they were, considering it was a prototype.
Uh-huh.
So I think they got the seating position down.
And what does your wife think about it?
Yeah, she really liked it. I mean,
Okay.
she had a she doesn't have like a ton of thoughts on most tech I showed her. I'm always trying to get more opinions out of her
Yeah,
whenever I
yeah.
can, but she was like, "Whoa, that feels very sleek. It feels like the future." And
Uh-huh.
um yeah, she was happy with it. She was
Yeah.
surprised by the look. And uh the one thing that I've seen you talk about and many others as well, that I kind of agree with her on. The one downside of this design is it definitely turns a lot of heads.
Oh
You
yeah.
attract a lot of attention,
Mhm.
and my wife and I don't like that.
Yeah.
We like to blend in with the crowd. We don't want to draw a bunch of eyes towards us.
Uh-huh.
So which is why we got, kind of a very popular vehicle currently. It's like
Yeah.
in California, at least with Model 3s,
Oh,
no
you
one's
just
gonna
blend right in.
look twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
As Rich Rebuilds calls them, the California Camrys, right?
Yeah.
They're very they're very simple. They're very just, yep, that's a sedan, whatever, it's electric. And
Yeah.
that's what we liked about it. And I love the numbers of the Aptera and I love the look, but at least for the first few years of production, it's definitely you're going to have to talk about it everywhere
Oh
you
yeah.
go.
Yeah. Whenever you park the thing, people are gonna be like, what is that thing?
Right.
Yeah.
It happened to us at a stoplight. I'd only been driving it for like 5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And this guy in a Prius was just like, hey, what is that? So we had to roll down the window
Uh-huh.
and be like, yeah, look up Aptera. She
Yeah.
was suggesting to them, my wife actually, I'm so jealous. She got to meet the CEO and Jason in person while I was out test driving. So
Right,
she
right.
got to catch up with them. She was suggesting that they should drive it around and put the actual name, the actual brand on the side. She said, that's
Yes.
your best advertising
Yeah.
because in Gamma's current design, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really need the word Aptera for me driving it around. But
Right,
if
because
you're
we know
trying
what it
to,
is.
we know what it is
Right.
exactly. So and I'm with you. I'd be okay with them ditching all logos and
Hmm.
branding. I think
Yeah.
the vehicle's iconic enough that you could probably get by without a single logo on the whole thing. But when people see the logo, they still don't know what to look up.
Exactly.
So I mean, they put QR codes on things and stuff,
Yeah.
but if they just put the name Aptera on the side,
Right.
that's what she was suggesting to them. You guys should drive it around and let people know, let them look it up, let them know the word and the brand.
Right.
So yeah, she's all on board. She's into it.
Okay. Yeah, my wife thinks it's the weirdest looking thing ever. She's like, why are you always interested in these bizarre looking cars? And I have a reservation in for a Cybertruck too. I've decided
Oh,
I'm
you
not.
do?
Yeah, I
Oh
do.
wow.
Yeah, I was one of the very early reservation holders. I have a very early
Really?
reservation number. And but
Oh, cool. I never
but
reserved one actually. Everyone
I
thought
am
I did.
but they the price is kind of crazy now.
Yeah, I
It
had kind of expected that, but yeah,
Yeah. I
the
mean,
the
it's not, if
demand
you
is too
compare it to
high.
the other trucks, it's not crazy, compared to the Rivian or the
Yeah.
price is in line with the competition. But,
Yeah.
when I signed up for the $40,000 truck, and it's
Oh,
not
you
a,
wanted the rear-wheel drive?
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that was the one I wanted if
but
I had to
it's
get
not
one.
a $40,000 truck. So,
No, but I
And
felt
also,
similarly about the pricing with Aptera. Is like I know there's a lot of talk about them increasing, but
uh,
I advocated both on and off the record with Chris Anthony. I was like, I think you're charging too little. Like, there's a ton of demand for this kind of thing, and yes, it's niche,
uh,
but look at what Tesla's doing. They fluctuate their pricing on like a weekly basis
yeah,
based on what the supply and demand is at that time.
right.
And I'm just all in favor of, I don't care if they scrap the referral program, I don't care if they raise prices, I just want them to survive.
Hmm.
Like, I just there's so many solar EV companies that went under that you
Hmm.
reported on them, you're well aware of. So I was like, we just need to make sure that you guys are profitable and around, and we can worry about the masses and bringing prices down later. Let's just
Uh-huh.
focus on making sure you all stay afloat.
Hmm. Yeah, because if they don't stay afloat, those of us who have it will have orphan vehicles,
Mm,
which is not a good place to
true.
be. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I talked to Chris Anthony, I think like I interviewed him like a month ago, and he's planning on doing like kind of the Tesla model of pricing, where the
Mm-hmm.
prices fluctuate based on their costs. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, we're just gonna price it so that we make a little bit of profit so that we stay afloat. And
Mm-hmm.
we want to make it as cheap as possible, but cheap as
Yeah.
possible while we still are solvent as a business. And I'm like,
Yeah. Right.
I think that's a reasonable plan. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
think
that's the
that's
most wholesome way to do it, I think.
yeah. Okay, so this is getting a little long, so I'm going to turn it into a two-part series. Um, Drew is going to talk about his thoughts after seeing the factory in part two. So join us tomorrow for part two. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.